Good morning, live from Liverpool. We're at second day of Future of the Left. Today, hopefully without any of the technical problems we had yesterday. Sorry again about that. We've now decided to put it live out on a website without the need for passwords, etc. So if you can watch it, please spread the word. Tell your comrades and friends to tune in. We've got lots planned today, including at 4 p.m. a session with Stella Assange, Deepa Driver, Ian Munro, and a former Icelandic minister who refused to frame up Julian Assange. Should be very interesting. We're also going to talk about the Ford report, and we're going to talk about free speech and also war on woke. We've got a really good sessions today. First, we're going to talk to Kevin Bean and Kevin Higgins, who are both in the studio. Good morning. It's been an interesting Labour Party conference, interesting in the sense that he doesn't almost have to do anything to surge ahead in the polls at the moment. 45%, 28% the Conservatives. And I think you could put Kermit the Frog up against the government at the moment and they would lead in the polls. I mean, it is pretty dire, isn't it? Which got to do a lot with the falling pound, which we'll get into it later in a session today as well. But first I want to talk to you about his attempt to put the Labour Party into the centre ground. And he said that he wants to be, the Labour Party should be the political wing of the British people, which sounds semi-military.
I don't know who the armed wing are, maybe the Tory party, possibly. I think the better way of defining what he's trying to do, his central strategy is to make a party that's acceptable to the ruling class. So he's now probably the political voice of the British ruling class. He's very much now going to play the safe pair of hands, the responsible statesman in comparison with the wild Tories who are going off on some mad experiment that the markets don't appear to like, although I'm sure they'll make a lot of money out of the speculations. But, electorally, he is trying to repeat that sort of myth of the centre ground, the broad mass of British people who will rally to a sensible politician. And he's going to do that by echoing Blair. And in doing that, he's, clearly putting it up to the left in the party because, as comrades know, Blair's name is mud amongst left-wing and indeed many just ordinary members of the public. So he's really going out of his way to say, I'm not left-wing, I'm not radical, I'm a safe pair of hands and the capitalist class can trust me.
Tony Blair had the advantage of being slightly charismatic. I mean, the same can't be said of Keir Starmer. Will this work, you think, his appeal to the centre ground? Is there a left that will still give him grief, or has that ship sailed?
Well, there still is a left in the Labour Party. It's clear from some of the votes yesterday that there are, particularly in the CLP delegations, and in fact last night a couple of the big rallies, around about 1,000 people turned out at a rally to hear Jeremy Corbyn. So, that shows that there still is a left there. It's maybe not being reflected in the Labour Party for the reasons that we've talked about already in terms of the suspensions and the continued witch hunt against the left. And also the fact that many of the union leaders are quite prepared to go along with Starmer. They want a Labour government. They think they can do deals with the Labour government. So, that they're largely behind what he's trying to do. As for the charisma test, I actually think Kermit the Frog has probably got more charisma. In fact, he had a really great personality, and in particular, those two old men who used to sit up in the box. The left shouldn't be like the two old men sitting up in the box passing comment.
Yeah. Just looking at you two.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But the point is that there is still a left. And, that left, if it becomes organised, particularly around very clear politics, then I think it can still, make its presence felt. And of course, there's the ongoing union struggles. I mean, there will be a demonstration today in Liverpool by a whole range of workers, the dockers, the RMT, and they will be attempting to put forward the argument that Labour should be fighting on behalf of the working class.
Can you see the tension rising between the unions and the labour? I mean, you said there's a bit of accommodation probably going on. It's a pull that's always going on, isn't it? With the trade union bureaucracy that is trying to make deals. The workers on the ground probably more militant than the bureaucracy. So how is this going to play out, do you think?
Well, I think it will be a rocky road. I think there will be these tensions, but I think that unless the sort of mass of militants have some sort of political strategy, then much of that militancy can be dissipated. Particularly if the union leaders want to sort of calm down on the struggles and so on. And in particular, if it looks as if a Labour government is on its way, I'm sure that many of those leaders will do that. On the other hand, it's also clear that, we've got the papers here today, which we've all had a good chance to look at, that there are many people in the establishment, in the media, who think that maybe Starmer and his Labour Party, his Labour government, could be the sort of government that could bring the unions on board. And again, there's an historical role for Labour leaders to do that. Their job is to corral the working class, to control it, and so I think in the triangulation and in the the various forces, there's still a lot of manoeuvre, a lot of things to play for, which is why for the left we shouldn't just say Starmer's in control. It's all over. Yeah. Far from that.
Oh no, it's never over, is it?
No.
I mean, this struggle continues until the class struggle continues. Yeah. This will carry on. Some people think that if Starmer gets in, becomes a minority government or a proper government, he will be so bad and attack the working class so much that the unions will rise, like a repeat of what happened with Tony Blair, perhaps. That the unions will get more militant, and perhaps then is the chance to set up some new kind of party of the left. I've heard that one a few times. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the period that people are comparing this most of all to is the late 70s, or in fact the 70s. There's a lot of fashionable talk at the moment. I mean, you can even see in fashions. I've actually seen people wearing flares, and they're doing it quite shamefacedly without bothering to hide it. And the same I think with politics. So ideas of sort of social partnership, of working together. This is an urgent crisis. We've all got to do our bit. I think are going to be very strong with the Labour leadership. As for forming a new left party and whether that would come out of a revolt of the unions, I think that again is sort of doing the rounds. But one of the problems, I think, with that sort of discussion is that it's often seen as just replicating a sort of better type of Labour Party. And I think we need to talk about the type of politics such a left party would have. It's not just a case of saying we're not Labour, or we're a better version of Labour, or indeed that we're going back to reclaim Labour, because Labour's record historically has been far from, great. So, trying to rebuild a fairly rotten set of politics from the past. So I think it is a discussion of what constitutes our programme, and particularly, our decisive break with capitalism, and above all, the force that's going to achieve that, which for me as a socialist is the working class. It's the activity of the working class. It'll be working class politics, not cooperating with the employers, not using the existing instruments of the state. So that is really quite a decisive break with capitalism, and that's not just going to arise out of trade union struggles. That needs political discussion and political development.
Yeah. Kevin, you've got a poem about Tony Blair, I believe.
I do. I write a lot of poems that are inspired by other poems, or in this case a song written by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill, who had a song called, and it's on a brilliant album that came out in 1997, with PJ Harvey actually sang the song I wrote the poem after, and it was what did the soldier bring his wife, or what did the Nazi bring his wife, in some translations, and it outlines the lovely things that the Nazi soldiers brought back for his wife from the different places that they visited in the 1940s, Prague, Brussels, Paris, Bucharest, until Russia, where it was a widow's veil. Now, I worked on this poem in 2016, and it had the most astonishing reaction because it resulted in my first suspension from the Labour Party for comparing Tony Blair to a Nazi. All I said is I rewrote it, and that turned up when I got my subject access request. That was there. So what did the politician get his wife after Bertolt Brecht? And what did she get the girlfriend from the student union meeting at which he first rose to his feet and realized he could speak? From that meeting she got the Snickers bar he forgot to eat. So busy was he watching them listen. And that speech, unabridged, every other night for 35 years. And what did she get his new wife from the time he first used a party conference microphone to agree with both sides? Those okay with the Muslims, Mexicans, Gypsies being here, and those who want them kept over there. From that microphone she took away their invitation to dine with the deputy mayor and his not new wife. And what did she get his no longer new wife when at the second attempt he won the seat on the city council? From his election she got to drink Pinot Noir and go swimming in their private club with the not-so-new wives of those who got the contracts to make the paving stones and install the pay and display ticket machines during his years as chairman of the relevant committee. And what did she get his well-maintained wife the night he was elected to the big, shiny parliament? From that night she took away an architect to redesign their new 3-story pad in the priciest possible part of the capital, and an article about herself in the Daily Express lifestyle pages. And what did she get the no longer new MP's no longer new wife the morning they made him minister? That morning she got to go horse riding with the leader of the House of Lords, 4th or 5th wife. And what did she get the no longer new cabinet minister's wife the night the landslide made him prime minister? That night she got to hold to her breast invitations to break foie gras with the Sultan of Brunei, the president of China, and the chance to write husband's speech announcing the crackdown on beggars who accost hard-working families who stop to ask for directions en route to the nearest funeral parlour. And what did she get the ex-prime minister's no longer new wife from all the depleted uranium shells he had dropped during the Battle of Basra, all the soldiers he sent to meet improvised explosive devices in far Mesopotamia in the hope of getting rid of something bigger than the beggars and prostitutes at King's Cross. From these she got white night terrors of him on trial for all their crimes, and the desire to never again look out the front window of their fine Connaught Square house at the tree from which it said they used to once string traitors.
Is that the one that got you expelled?
Suspended the first time. It is actually true that the Connaught Square where Tony Blair apparently lives, there is a tree where during the Civil War, I think, traitors were allegedly strung up.
What are you saying, Kevin?
I'm already expelled. I'm expelled, so they can't do anything to me now.
I think he's hung himself plenty of times over. Mind you, he's making a fortune now, isn't he? Kevin, yesterday we've also had a vote in favor of PR. And although Keir Starmer says he's probably going to ignore that vote, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the unions so far, the unions previously voted against it, and this time they voted in favour of it. This is why it's gone through. The membership has always been in favour of a kind of PR system. Being from Germany, where we do have a PR electoral system, it does have advantages for the left. You don't have to just rely on the Labour Party. You can actually build an alternative outside the Labour Party. There's the Linke Party. It's going through its own problems at the moment and is close to implosion. Nevertheless, it kind of forces the left together in a way that the first past the post system does not. It does quite the opposite, isn't it? It kind of leads to splits and further splits on the left because you're not going to get anybody into parliament anyway. Do you think it would be a step forward for the left if we had a PR system of some sort?
Yeah, I'm generally in favour of PR, but I suppose in broad principle terms, in terms of democratisation, in particular, a republic, which unfortunately we didn't get to talk about yesterday, but a whole series of democratic reforms which put a lot of emphasis on self-government. So PR and allowing all shades of opinion to be represented in representative institutions, I think, is a good idea. In terms of the left, I think Germany's one example. Die Linke may not be the best example of a party because it was sort of rather cobbled together as far as I'm aware. But there are other countries where PR operates and the left can perform quite respectably. In Ireland, for example, the left has a much stronger presence in the Dáil and indeed in the European Parliament, and left-wing ideas of a sort, and indeed some left-wing representatives do make a real impact in public life, which in a first-past-the-post system, as in Britain, is not really very likely. But I don't see it as a sort of panacea. And I think that one of the things we have to be slightly careful about, or at least to understand the politics of this, is that some of the push for this is coming from those who favour what they call a progressive alliance, which is a return essentially to late 19th century lib-labism. And it's the sort of thing that Tony Blair and Paddy Ashdown were very friendly about in the 90s. I think Blair was slightly annoyed that he had such a large majority because he wanted, I think, to do an alliance with the Liberals. And there's a lot of talk about that at the moment. Yes, I'm in favour on a principle basis. I'm also in favour of it tactically because I think it would give the left a voice in representative politics in Britain. But I'm also aware of where that pressure is coming from. When I was down at the party conference, peering through the security barriers, looking longingly into the conference hall, rather like a Victorian orphan shut out from his heritage. Someone came along and put a leaflet into my hand, and I looked at the list of speakers who are in favour of PR, and I saw such noted Democrats as Luke Akehurst was speaking on the platform with John McDonnell. Luke Akehurst is the NEC member. Comrades may not know this. He's a fairly right-wing person, and he's in effect the sort of to coin a phrase which was the title given to Reinhard Heydrich in Bohemia, he's the sort of Reichskommissar for the Labour Party in Liverpool. He vetoes and controls who are going to be candidates. So if people like that are pushing for it, then it's you can see that the right has an agenda with PR as well.
Yes, indeed. At 12 o'clock, we're going to talk about the economy in more detail, but it is on the front pages everywhere. First question, will you be able at 12 o'clock to explain to us what the hell is going on and why interest rates are going to be shooting up to 6% perhaps, as some economists demand? And secondly, does the Labour Party have a plan to deal with this situation?
Yeah. Well, I won't be able to explain it, but I do know two men who can, at least two comrades who can. And we've got two good socialist economists, Michael Roberts and Peter Kennedy, who I think will explain the nature of this crisis. And I think it's quite important that we do that, because there's a lot of mystification around, particularly when workers are trying to get compensatory wage increases. are not wage increases. They're just trying to hold on to what they've got. So there's a lot of mystification around that and trying to cut through that. And also trying to cut through the nonsense about the markets. I'm sure the comrades will do that. As far as I can see, and we'll get more detail from Kermit later on this afternoon, the policy does seem to be very much one of stability, of in fact behaving more like a sort of a traditional Tory government. The phrase that's being batted around by the Labour PR people is, we're going to be the party of sound money, balanced budgets, all of this stuff about you can't borrow too much, we're not going to be extravagant with workers, we're going to maintain a tight, steady ship. And, in many ways that will mirror some of the policies that are being conducted by European governments. But one thing we can be clear, that type of economic strategy doesn't favour the working class. It's the sort of strategy that the Financial Times and even some of the Murdoch papers, The Economist as well, are now starting to work towards. That's why I began by describing Keir Starmer as being the political wing of the British ruling class. He's the safest pair of hands currently amongst the politicians. I mean, the Tories are the sort of wild men. I mean, the markets are behaving as if we've got some sort of Bolshevik in 11 Downing Street. So in that way, Starmer's policy is one of stability and of certainty. Keir Starmer, the man you can trust.
But is that even possible in today's economic situation? Can you be, can it be solved by, I don't know, bringing back the 45% tax rate? I mean, that seems to be the only thing coming out so far.
Yeah. I mean, it can't, because, particularly in terms of British capitalism, the issues of productivity, the impact of Brexit has had on the British economy, and of course the question of energy, even just on a sort of a modest basis in terms of supplies of energy. The policies of previous governments have contributed to this. So no, there are no sort of quick or easy fixes. Our arguments as socialists is obviously the decisive break with capitalism. But in terms of the Labour strategy, it will inevitably, I think, turn to attacks on the working class, and that's where the relationship with the unions will be so important.
Yeah. Very fluid times, for sure.
Yeah.
Everything can happen, and hopefully it's going to be something good happening. I mean, capitalism is quite unstable at the moment, and that could open up a lot of possibilities for the working class. So it's been looking bad for the left over the last few years, to put it mildly. But things can change quickly, and that's one of the themes running through today's program. How do we organize and in order to be ready for when things change? We're going to have a short clip on the Chakrabarti report now, and then I'm back with Tony Greenstein.